"Get out of my sight, you filthy monkey." The words tore through the quiet air of the first-class cabin on Flight North Star 218 from New York to Los Angeles. The entire cabin froze. Every gaze turned toward the black man standing in the aisle. Jordan Miles, dressed in a charcoal gray tailored suit, his eyes deep and calm, didn't react immediately. He could feel the fire rising from his chest to his throat, that familiar heat he had learned to suppress after years of living in a world where power often came in the color of one's skin. One slow breath, one heartbeat. He spoke his voice, low but steady. "Ma'am, this is my seat. My ticket clearly says Seat 1A. In front of him stood Victoria Hale, a woman in her mid-50s, blonde hair swept into a polished bun, crimson lipstick drawn tight with fury, her arms crossed. The soft cabin light glinted off the diamond bracelet on her wrist, shimmering like a declaration of status. "That paper doesn't mean anything," she said, with a sneer, dragging each word as if she were doing him a favor by answering. "People like you don't belong here." From a few rows back came a faint gasp. Some passengers pretended to read their newspapers, others peeked over their seats. The air once filled with the gentle scent of champagne and leather grew heavy with discomfort, fear and shame. Jordan stood still, eyes unwavering, anger contained. His hand tightened around the boarding pass, his knuckles whitening as if holding the world together. North Star's first-class cabin was designed as a promise of perfection, cream-colored leather seats, soft golden lighting, and a faint hum of jazz in the background. But in that moment, all the luxury became the bitter backdrop to a play no one wanted to perform. Jordan had booked this flight 6 months ago. He always chose Seat 1A by the window, where he could work while watching at the sunrise above the ocean of clouds. He never imagined that today that same seat would become the center of a storm born of prejudice. He took a step forward, his voice still composed. "Perhaps there's been a mistake. I booked this seat, and the system confirmed it long ago." Victoria didn't even glance at the ticket. She tilted her chin, pulled out her phone, and said into it, her tone sharp and shrill, "Richard, speak to management. Will you? They're mixing up first class again. We need to maintain standards." Hanging up, she looked at Jordan as if he had stained the carpet. Flight attendant Emily Larson, a woman around 26, approached with a perfectly trained smile. "Hello, sir. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Is everything all right?" But her eyes for just a moment lingered on Victoria's diamond earrings and Hermes bag. Her smile remained, yet her tone leaned unmistakably to one side. "Mrs. Hale, you're still in Seat 1A, as always, correct?" Victoria smiled smugly. "Of course. I've flown here for over 20 years. It must be a system error." Emily took the ticket from Jordan, glanced at it, then looked up at him, hesitating. "Sir, could you please show me the credit card you used to purchase the ticket?" "Just so I can verify it." The air froze again. A small request, yet heavy with implication. Jordan understood instantly because he had heard it too many times before, at conferences, at galas, checking into hotels. The question was never spoken outright, but the meaning was always clear. "Are you sure you belong here?" He took out his phone, opened the North Star app and held it up. "Here's my ticket, my confirmation code, my account details, everything. Booked on March 10th. Victoria let out a faint laugh. Anyone can fake those things nowadays. The internet's full of people trying to reach places they don't deserve. The words fell lightly, but landed like stones. Jordan inhaled deeply, steadying his voice, but his heart was pounding. He remembered all the meetings where his ideas were dismissed for lack of experience, the parties where people assumed he was the driver of his own company. Every time he had chosen silence. But today, with humiliation thrown at him in front of dozens of watching eyes, silence would mean acceptance. He looked around. Some passengers stared down, others turned away. That silence cold, complicit, crueler than the insult itself. Emily, clearly uncomfortable, spoke softly. "Perhaps we could arrange another seat for you. Still in first class, of course, just so everyone feels more comfortable." More comfortable? Jordan smiled faintly, a smile that never reached his eyes. He understood. In their eyes, comfort meant his absence. Outside the window, early winter snow drifted across the runway. Inside the clock ticked, but time itself felt still. Jordan set his small suitcase down. His eyes darkened calm like water before a storm. He unlocked his phone and typed a few lines, a short message sent somewhere. Then he looked up at Emily, his tone unnervingly even. "Could you please help me get in touch with Captain Robert Chen? I'd like to discuss North Star's seat verification protocol." Victoria scoffed, her laughter sharp. "Ridiculous. Do you really think the captain has time for nonsense like this?" Jordan didn't reply. He just looked straight ahead, his gaze so composed it made others uneasy. Inside him, anger had cooled into something else, calculation. He knew that in cabins like this, power didn't lie in loud voices or shining jewelry. It lay in control, and no one understood control better than he did. No one there knew that the man they were doubting had once signed a multi-billion-dollar investment that he had saved North Star from bankruptcy 2 years earlier. No one knew that just a few taps on that phone could make the entire system tremble. Jordan slowly closed his eyes. He wasn't seeking revenge. He wanted justice, the kind that arrives quietly, but shakes the sky. The cabin announcement came on, preparing for departure, but first class was far from calm. Everyone was still watching, waiting to see what the man would do. He said nothing more. He placed his phone on the tray table, typed one last line, then lifted his head. The soft cabin light reflected in his eyes deep, steady, and hiding a storm about to break. In that moment, Jordan Miles was no longer just a passenger looking for his seat. He had become a test for a system that believed it had outgrown prejudice, only to show that with a single look of disdain, every layer of civility could peel away. No one yet knew that the message he had just sent would set off a night that would force the entire airline and the entire country to look at itself in the mirror. The sound of suitcase wheels clattered softly against the cabin floor as a new group of passengers boarded. No one realized that at that very moment in the front row of first class, a silent clash was quietly turning into a storm. Victoria Hale crossed her legs, her voice brimming with confidence. "I've been sitting in seat 1A for 20 years. There must be a mistake. North Star always reserves this seat for platinum passengers. I even know the regional director personally. Flight attendant Emily Larson. Young blonde hair neatly tied back, wearing the kind of smile trained to soothe, tried to remain calm. But her eyes flickered briefly between Victoria and Jordan, then lingered a little longer on the woman with the burgundy Hermes bag and the scent of expensive Chanel perfume. "Yes, I understand, Mrs. Hale," Emily said softly. "Let me check the system again." She turned to Jordan with a professional, slightly strained smile. "Sir, could I please see your boarding pass again?" Jordan handed her the ticket, his hand steady, but there was a cold glint in his eyes. From his point of view, this wasn't just a dispute over a seat. He had seen this scene 100 times before, on the street, in boardrooms, on business flights, the same song on repeat. You must be mistaken. This place isn't for you. He had heard it said, in more polished, more elegant ways, but the meaning was always the same, an invisible line dividing who belongs and who doesn't. As Emily bent down to check the information again, Jordan looked around the cabin. Cream-colored leather seats, champagne glasses gleaming on trays, neatly placed copies of Forbes Traveller. Everything was perfect, except for one thing: the way people looked at him as if he were taking someone else's place. "Could I see the credit card used to purchase the ticket?" Sir Emily asked, lowering her voice as if trying to be polite, yet the doubt was clear. "It's just to verify the transaction. It'll be quick." A pause of silence followed. Jordan looked at the card in his wallet, then back at her. He knew that if he refused, they would accuse him of being uncooperative. But if he agreed, he would be admitting that his right to sit there still needed extra proof. Both choices were wrong. So he chose silence. Instead of replying, he unlocked his phone and swiped across the screen. The booking code name and electronic ticket all appeared clearly on the North Star Premier app. He held it up and said evenly, "This is my official confirmation. I don't need to prove anything else." Victoria laughed, a sharp, cold sound dripping with contempt. "Please, anyone can fake things like that on a phone nowadays," she said, turning toward nearby passengers. "I've seen it plenty of times. People buy economy tickets and then pretend there's been a mix-up. It's pathetic." A man in seat 2B snorted softly, pretending to look at his magazine. A young woman tilted her head, her expression wavering between curiosity and discomfort. The entire cabin had become a stage, Jordan forced into the role of the intruder, and Victoria casting herself as the guardian of order. Emily smiled awkwardly, trying to keep her tone gentle. "Mr. Miles, sometimes the system makes mistakes. If you don't mind, I could find you another seat, still in first class, just so everyone feels more comfortable." Comfortable. The word cut through the air like a velvet-covered blade. Jordan felt something inside him tighten. For years he had learned how to live for other people's comfort, staying silent, when interrupted smiling, when dismissed stepping aside to avoid making others uncomfortable. But today something in him had shifted. The weariness had turned into resolve. Inside, he was counting his breaths. Every inhale was a memory of being underestimated. Every exhale was a reminder not to let them win. "That won't be necessary," he said slowly. "I'm not looking for another seat. I just want to sit in the one I paid for." Victoria leaned forward, her voice rising with anger and the fear of being challenged. "Do you even know who I am? I've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the North Star Foundation. I know the regional director, the entire VIP staff. I'm not moving my seat because of someone who doesn't know how to behave." Emily stood between them, her smile faltering. "Please, everyone, let's stay calm. We can resolve this peacefully." But that word, peacefully, made Jordan want to laugh. She was trying to soothe the person causing the problem, because that was easier than facing the truth. From a few rows back, whispers began to rise. "What's going on? That black man must have taken the wrong seat. Not sure who's right, but from the way she's talking, she's clearly a regular." The murmurs pricked at Jordan's composure, like tiny needles piercing his calm. He took a slow breath and spoke evenly. "Miss Larson, I've said it already. This is my seat. If you're uncertain, please call the captain. I'd like to speak with him directly." Emily hesitated, her eyes flicking quickly toward Victoria, as if seeking some unspoken approval. Victoria shrugged, smiling with smug defiance. "Go ahead, Miss Larson. Let's see who he believes." Jordan turned toward the window. Outside, the runway was blanketed in white snow, reflecting the airport lights into a silver haze. In the glass, he saw his own reflection, not the wealthy executive he was now, but the 12-year-old boy who'd once been chased out of a shopping mall by a security guard, simply because he didn't look like a customer. He had promised himself he would never bow to prejudice again. He pulled out his phone and typed a short message to Helen Tan, the chief executive officer of North Star. "Helen, I'm on flight NS 218. There's a serious issue with passenger bias and staff behavior. Activate the emergency review protocol." The message sent with a soft chime. Victoria kept talking, her voice echoing through the still air. "Honestly, you never know who's who these days. Buying a ticket doesn't mean you deserve the seat." Her words fell heavy as lead. A few more glances turned toward Jordan, some curious, some skeptical, some pitying. He said nothing. He simply stared out the window, where the night sky stretched wide before takeoff. Inside him, a plan was already forming. If the world needed proof that prejudice still existed tonight, he would show them not through anger, but through truth. The flight attendant returned, saying, "Sir, I've spoken to the captain. He'll stop by before we take off." Victoria smirked. "Good. I'd like to hear what he has to say, too." Jordan nodded slightly. He knew what was coming, not just a conversation, but a test for the entire system. Somewhere in the cabin, someone lifted a phone and started recording a young passenger, eyes wide with curiosity. He didn't know that in just a few hours that video would flood the internet, drawing millions of comments and thousands of overdue apologies. For now, though, everything remained quiet, unnervingly quiet. But Jordan could hear it, the wind outside, the ticking of time, and the steady beat of his own heart. He pressed his lips together and whispered to himself like a vow. "No one takes the seat I paid for. No one defines me by my color." The cabin light cut across his face, outlining the strong line of his jaw, the image of a man about to make the sky itself listen. The air in first class had thickened like fog glances, slid past and avoided, yet no one left their seat, because everyone knew they were witnessing something more than a dispute over seating. It was the moment when the mask of civility was about to fall. Flight attendant Emily Larson returned after speaking into her small earpiece. The strained smile was glued to her lips, but her hands trembled around the small tablet she held. "Mr. Miles," she said, voice sweet but tentative. "I rechecked everything. It appears there is a duplicate ticket in the system. I truly apologize for the inconvenience. But to avoid any trouble, could you temporarily take seat 2C? We will serve you exactly as if you were in 1A. From the front," Victoria Hale smiled a victor's smile. "See, I told you. North Star always keeps this seat for platinum passengers like me." She leaned back and pulled sunglasses from her bag, as if the matter were settled. But Jordan Miles didn't move. He remained standing back, straight eyes locked on Emily. "Why should I leave my seat simply because she believes it is hers?" Emily faltered. "I just want everyone to be more comfortable, sir. It would cost nothing for you to move back and Mrs. "Hail, Miss Larson!" Jordan cut in his voice, low each word, dropping to the cabin floor with weight. "What you are calling comfortable is simply convenient for prejudice." No one spoke. Another flight attendant at the far end of the cabin stole a glance. A middle-aged couple pretended to open a magazine, but their eyes stayed fixed on the exchange. In Jordan's mind, old memories unspooled like a faded reel at age 28. A security guard at a luxury hotel had demanded additional verification when he checked into a suite at age 33. A bank employee insisted he prove his income even though he was there to invest. Now at age 45, while he held 34% of North Star Airlines, they were still asking him the same question in a different form. "Are you sure you deserve to be here?" He drew a quiet breath and met Emily's eyes. "I bought this ticket 6 months ago. I don't need another seat. I need fairness." Victoria scoffed and turned to the passenger beside her, a middle-aged man in a suit, Thomas Grant, reading the Wall Street Journal. "Do you see," she said loudly enough for the cabin to hear, "society has gone mad. Everyone thinks they have rights just because they paid a few $1,000s. And people like us who have stayed loyal to this airline for decades are inconvenienced by someone who doesn't understand the rules of the game." Thomas Grant frowned, said nothing, and quietly folded his paper, his glance skimming over Jordan with something like shame mixed with empathy. Jordan did not turn, but he heard every word. People like her always spoke in that tone, confident and afraid, at once, afraid that if others were treated equally, their privileges would erode. Emily tried again, smoothing things over. "Sir, I understand you are upset, but if you keep standing here, we will delay departure. Could we discuss this after takeoff?" Jordan looked straight at her, his voice so calm it silenced the entire cabin. "No, Miss Larson. I will not wait another flight to talk about fairness. Because silence is the very reason this keeps happening." The airplane fell still, only the soft breath of the air vents whispered overhead. A young woman in row 3 leaned toward her friend and whispered, "Who is he?" "I don't know, but he is so calm. If I were him, I would be shouting." Emily lowered her voice. "Mr. Miles, please understand. I am only doing my job." Jordan nodded slightly. "And I am helping you understand that your job is to protect your passenger's dignity, not to reassure the person with more money." A quick flush rose on Emily's cheeks. She looked around as if searching for backup. From the galley at the front, firm footsteps struck the floor. A deep female voice sounded behind Jordan. "What seems to be the problem here?" The newcomer was Dana Brooks, the first-class cabin supervisor, about 42, dark hair in a tight bun, a serious face carrying the authority of someone used to resolving things quickly. "So the flight is not late." Emily briefed her at once. Dana looked Jordan over from head to toe, professional eyes assessing, then shifted to Victoria with an easy smile. "Mrs. Hale, lovely to see you again. I heard you just received the new VIP pin. Congratulations." Victoria beamed. "Thank you, Dana. But it seems the airline needs to review its booking system. These days anyone can buy first class, can't they?" Jordan stayed silent, but the restraint had vanished from his eyes. A storm was rising there. Dana turned back to him. "Sir, I am asking you to cooperate. We can arrange another seat for you, or if you are not satisfied, you may take a later flight." A brief silence followed, as if the air itself held its breath. Jordan smiled, and that smile made Dana pause. "Do you know who you are speaking to?" he asked. So Dana replied quickly, "I do not need to know. I only need you to cooperate so we can depart on time." "How fitting," Jordan murmured almost to himself. People always value being on time more than being right. He opened his laptop from his bag, the screen flared to life, casting a cool glow across his composed face. His fingers moved swiftly over the keys. No one knew what he was doing, sending an email, taking notes, or simply recording every word being said. Victoria tilted her head and sneered. I know this type, pretending to type an email to look important. Pathetic. Emily swallowed hard. She was beginning to realize the situation was beyond her control. Dana, maybe we should actually call the captain, she whispered. Dana shook her head. No need. We can handle it. But Jordan's gaze stayed calm, as if he knew everything was unfolding exactly as planned. He closed the laptop and spoke slowly. Thank you, but I will wait for the captain. Because what is happening here is no longer about a seat. The air tightened like a drawn string. From the third row, an elderly voice rang out steady and clear. You are right, son. Every head turned. It was Mrs. Lorraine Parker, an older woman in a simple blue dress, short silver hair, eyes bright as steel. I have watched this for 10 minutes, and I know exactly what is happening. Victoria snapped around. Be quiet. This has nothing to do with you. Lorraine raised an eyebrow, her voice low and firm. Nothing to do with me. When a person is publicly humiliated because of their skin color, it concerns all of us. The cabin dropped into absolute silence. Emily, Dana, and Victoria stood motionless, as if someone had drawn back a curtain and let the light pour in. Jordan looked at Mrs. Lorraine and nodded his thanks. In his eyes, the fire of anger cooled into something stronger conviction. But for Victoria, it was the final provocation. She gripped the armrest and growled, Fine. If you want to drag the captain into this, do it. I will show you who is leaving this plane. The words, arrogant and icy, dropped the last veil and exposed what everyone already knew. This was no longer a fight over a seat. It was a confrontation between privilege and dignity. And Jordan Miles, the man who had been quiet for half an hour, knew the time for silence had passed. He unlocked his phone. Another message went out. This time only 4 words. Activate live protocol now. No one understood what it meant. But in a few minutes, when the captain arrived, and the airline systems shuddered under an emergency alert, they would. The chime announcing the final door closure stretched out like a warning bell for something about to shatter. Yet in the first-class cabin of North Star NS-218, no one cared about departure time anymore. Every eye was fixed on 3 people. Jordan Miles, the black man, standing calmly in the aisle. Victoria Hale, the elegant white woman, flushed with anger. And Lorraine Parker, the silver-haired woman glowing under the cabin lights, who had just broken the wall of silence the cabin had built. I have seen this scene far too many times. Lorraine said, her voice slow and steady, each word striking like a hammer against the disguise of civility draped over the cabin. People think discrimination no longer exists, but one look at the eyes. They turn on you, and I know it is still here. Only more refined, Emily Larson swallowed and glanced at Supervisor Dana Brooks. Dana forced a stiff smile. Ma'am, please take your seat. We will resolve this. You have been resolving it for 10 minutes, Lorraine replied without moving. All you have done is to soothe the one in the wrong. The airplane fell silent. No more soft music, no more awkward laughter, only heavy, hurried breathing remained. Victoria Hale broke the quiet, first whipping around as she ground out each word. Enough, I do not need your moral lecture. I just want to sit in my place, and I do not want anyone interfering in my private matter. Lorraine's mouth curled. Private when you humiliate a man in the middle of an airplane cabin in front of dozens of witnesses. Do you still think it is private? Her words made a few passengers nod. A young woman in row 2 set a hand on her chest, her gaze unsteady. A businessman in row 3, who had been hiding behind his magazine, slowly lowered it. The wall of complicity was cracking. Jordan Miles remained still. He did not need to speak, because everything was revealing itself. He looked at Lorraine, and their eyes met in a wordless understanding. In that instant, he saw his mother's reflection, the nurse in Atlanta, who taught him, "You do not need to shout to be heard. You only need to stand tall, and the truth will speak on its own." He had practiced standing tall his entire life, and today here in first class, the lesson was being tested again. Victoria turned to the attendants. "Call security. I do not feel safe with this man. He is threatening me." Both Emily and Dana froze. Jordan had not moved or spoken yet. Those words fell like a match into a barrel of fuel. Several passengers started fumbling with their phones. Some opened their cameras. Others went live on social media. Truth was no longer trapped in the cabin. It was seeping out through every frame and every comment. Emily lowered her voice. "Mrs. Hale, I think we should stay calm. Calling security could delay the flight." "Delay it then," Victoria snapped. "But I will not sit next to this imposter. He does not belong here." A soft "oh" drifted from the rows behind. A young, brown-skinned woman covered her mouth and whispered, "What did she just say?" The man beside her nodded and murmured, "I heard it clearly. He does not belong here." Those whispers were small, yet in this heavy air, they rolled like thunder. Jordan turned slightly toward Victoria, his gaze not angry, but uncannily calm. "Mrs. Hale," he said in a warm baritone, "I will not speak the way you are speaking. I will ask one question. Why do you believe I do not belong here?" Victoria faltered. She had no answer, only arrogance laid bare. "You know why," she said, struggling to steady her voice. "Because I have lived long enough to tell who is real and who is not, and you do not look like the people who sit here." Jordan nodded lightly. A brief smile touched his lips. "Thank you. You have just proven to the world that the real issue is not this seat." While Victoria reeled, Lorraine stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly, though her voice was steel. "I was told to leave a diner because I was black. They said it was to make everyone comfortable. But this young man," she looked at, "Jordan is standing here, so everyone can be truly comfortable when justice is seen." The first clap came from row 4, small and alone. Then another. Then a few more. Victoria started and turned to see a cluster of passengers looking at her, no longer with sympathy but with judgment. Supervisor Dana Brooks bit her lip. She was not a bad person, only someone too used to choosing the easier side. Yet when she met Lorraine's gaze and saw Jordan still standing tall, something stirred inside her, a flicker of guilt. She lifted her earpiece. "Operations, connect me to the captain. We need support for passenger verification." A man's voice came through the earpiece. "Deep and even, copy. I will be there immediately." Victoria folded her arms and snapped. "You do not need to call the captain. I told you this seat has always been mine. North Star will never take the word of a—" She did not finish because Jordan's voice cut in light yet decisive. "Miss Brooks, let the captain come, and if possible call passenger services management. I believe this situation should be recorded." Officially, Emily looked up at him for the first time. She saw the difference. This was not someone trying to make trouble. This was someone so used to being doubted that he had been forced to become living evidence for justice. The cockpit door opened, and Captain Robert Chen appeared, an Asian man around 50 with a serious face. He stepped into the cabin. "What is going on here?" he asked. Victoria rushed in. "Captain, thank heaven. Someone is occupying my seat, causing trouble and threatening passengers. Robert Chen glanced around and then looked at Jordan. Jordan smiled and lifted a hand in greeting. "Good evening, Captain. I think we should speak privately about North Star's seat verification protocol." The line drew the breath from the cabin. Something in Jordan's tone made Captain Chen hesitate. He studied the man before him, the eyes, the bearing, the composure, and sensed that this was not an ordinary passenger before he could ask more. The phone in Dana Brooks's pocket buzzed again and again. She glanced down, and her face went pale. "Internal alert code level 7. VIP involved urgent handling." She looked up, eyes wide, stammering, "Level 7, that is impossible." Jordan stood in quiet stillness, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. He said nothing, but the calm had turned into something else in the cabin. Fear someone had just touched, a layer of power they did not know existed. Victoria still did not understand. She scowled. "Why are you still standing there? Get out of my seat right now." Jordan turned to her with a serenity that was almost unsettling. "No, ma'am." He said, "I will remain here, because sometimes people need to witness themselves being wrong before the world proves it. For them, North Star's first class. Once a symbol of status had become a courtroom in the sky. No judge and no jury, only the truth, and it was about to be read aloud. A light tap. The click sounded as Victoria Hale opened the Livestream app on her phone under the soft white cabin lights. The screen caught her face. Bold red lipstick eyes, blazing as if she were playing the heroic victim. "Hello, everyone," she declared in an even theatrical tone. "I am in the first-class cabin of North Star Airlines, and someone is trying to steal my seat. Yes, you heard that right. Steal my seat." The words rang through the cabin like a signal to launch a modern witch hunt. Flight attendant Emily Larson startled and hurried over Mrs. "Hale, please stop recording airline policy. Does not allow policy." Victoria cut her off, lifting the phone higher. "I have the right to protect myself. I am being harassed by an aggressive man who is pretending to be a first-class passenger." The camera swung toward Jordan Miles, who remained quiet in his seat. He did not speak or smile. He simply looked out the window. The blue glow of a screen washed across his face, making him seem almost removed from the space, as if he occupied another layer of reality where people no longer needed to shout to prove the truth. Meanwhile, comments began to pour into the live stream. "My goodness, did he fake a first-class ticket? Be careful, ma'am. Watch out for theft. This is why I only fly private. Why would an airline let that kind of person into first class?" The lines of text raced by cold and cutting like blades. The truth was not yet known, but prejudice had already chosen sides. Emily stood frozen mouth, working but with no words. And Dana Brooks, the cabin supervisor, folded her arms and sighed in her mind. A fear more practical than fairness took hold. If this went online, she would be asked why she had not acted, and action in her mind meant removing the problem. She stepped toward Jordan. Her voice sharpened. "Sir, I need you to cooperate. Other passengers do not feel safe. If you do not vacate the seat, I will have to call airport security." Jordan turned, his calm gaze. Made Dana take a half-step back. "You say not safe because of what Miss Brooks, because I am speaking softly, or because I am not bowing my head?" Dana did not answer for a heartbeat. He saw the tug of war in her eyes between what is right and what is easy. She chose the latter. Victoria kept narrating to the live stream, her voice now fully dramatic, like an actor buoyed by applause. "Do you see, everyone? I am only protecting my rights." He refuses to leave the seat, and the crew is doing nothing. This is a threat to passenger safety. The comments exploded within minutes. Thousands were watching. Live hashtags began to appear. Hashtag flight fraud. Hashtag seat scam. Hashtag North Star fail. Someone leaned toward a friend and whispered, "I think she is live streaming. This is going to go viral." Lorraine Parker gripped her armrest, her eyes lit with fire. She is smearing herself and does not know it. In row 2, Thomas Grant, the middle-aged businessman who had been silent from the start, finally spoke. "Mrs. Hale, I think you should stop. This is not right." Victoria turned sparks in her eyes. "Not right? Do you think I am afraid? I have flown for more than 20 years. I know exactly who has the right to sit here." "No, you only know that those who look like you have the right," Thomas answered evenly. A hush fell. The cabin held its breath. Few dared to say such a thing out loud. The young attendant, Emily, bit her lip, her voice trembling. "Mrs. Hale, please lower your phone. We need to maintain order." "Order?" Victoria curled her lip. "Order is when everyone stays in their place. I am here because I deserve it." And she pointed straight at Jordan. "Does not." The word "does not" struck like a hammer, a single syllable that froze the air. Jordan stayed silent. He opened his laptop and typed a few lines. No one knew what he wrote. Then he stopped, looked up and stared directly into the live stream lens that now framed his face. His voice was deep and composed. "Mrs. Hale, you are speaking to thousands of people. I hope you realize that when the truth is revealed, this video will become evidence not of fraud, but of how power and prejudice operate in a supposedly civilized world." The line made Victoria falter for a few seconds. The stream went dead, quiet. The comments slowed. A few began to type. "Wait, he sounds educated. Has anyone checked the real ticket? I feel like she is going too far." But Victoria would not stop anger, and the fear of losing face pushed her further. "Are you threatening me?" she shouted. "Do you think fancy words will fool me? You are a fraud, a man trying to steal someone else's privilege." Her voice broke, harsh, yet shaking. She was no longer talking to Jordan. She was talking to the fear inside herself. She turned the phone back to her virtual audience. "Do you see, he is so calm. That is their trick. That is how they do it. Play the victim to gain favor. I will send this video to every elite passenger group. We must protect standards." The comments erupted again. The online storm had formed. Dana Brooks's voice cut in. "All right, Mrs. Hale, I will notify security at the gate. We need to re-verify everything." She lifted her earpiece and spoke quickly. "Control, this is Brooks. We have a disruptive passenger request. Verification of boarding credentials. Need immediate support." The reply crackled through. "Copy, be advised, live camera in progress. Maintain standard protocol." The response gave Dana pause. She turned to Jordan. He was looking at her. Not angry, only deeply disappointed. "You are choosing to protect the brand," he said softly. "But you forget a brand is only strong when it protects people." In that instant, Victoria's phone chimed. A notification flashed across the live stream. "Flight fraud is trending. 9.3 thousand live viewers." She smiled with satisfaction and turned back to the lens. "See, the whole country is watching. This is how we keep our standards." From behind, Lorraine shook her head. "No, you are feeding a fire that will burn you." And just then, a piercing tone burst from Dana's earpiece. "Alert level 7. VIP passenger involved. Pause all action and await instructions from headquarters." Dana went rigid. Emily's eyes widened. Victoria still did not understand, but she saw their faces drain of colour. "What does level 7 mean?" she asked, her voice unsteady. No one answered. Jordan gently closed his laptop and looked into the still live camera. His voice light as a breeze. "Perhaps you should end the live stream, because in a few minutes your audience will witness the one thing you least want to see." Victoria let out a scornful laugh, clinging to calm. "Are you trying to scare me?" Jordan smiled. "No, I am inviting you to bear witness to yourself online." The viewer count kept rising in the cabin. Every breath seemed to gather in one place. No one knew that in only a few minutes the phone in Victoria's hand would drop to the floor and the streaming screen would go dark. But before that happened, the world was still watching. And North Star Airlines was about to become the center of a storm greater than any internet fire yet seen. First class on North Star Flight NS-218 fell silent as if all the air had been drained out. Only the soft ding of a new message sounded from Jordan Miles's phone. He opened it, read quickly, then nodded slightly. The storm was coming, but not for him. Victoria Hale continued speaking into her camera, her voice trembling yet shrill. "He is trying to threaten me. Do you see he is recording, to destroy my reputation, but I will not back down." As she spoke, Jordan placed a call holding the phone to his ear. His voice calm and low. Not loud, but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I am on flight NS-218. He said, "I am witnessing the very issue we flagged in last month's internal report, bias in service. Conduct, it is happening right in front of me." The cabin went dead. Still heads turned. The words "internal report" and the precision in his tone carried the weight of authority on the other end. A woman's voice replied, "Copy that, Mr." Miles North Star headquarters is monitoring the situation. Protocol 7 has been activated. Those last two words. Protocol 7 made. Dana Brooks, the cabin supervisor, go cold. It was the highest alert level, triggered only when an executive or major shareholder was mistreated, and it was usually initiated by the chairman of the board himself. Dana looked up, lips trembling. "Chairman." Jordan ended the call, put the phone away and said nothing. He simply looked at her beside him. Emily Larson's face had gone pale. She whispered, "Dana, what does that mean? Level 7 is for VIPs, isn't it?" Dana couldn't answer. Her heart was pounding in the cockpit. Captain Robert Chen received the emergency signal. The voice in his earpiece said, "Captain, the passenger in seat. 1A is a corporate executive priority. All crew actions are now being monitored, live by headquarters." Chen frowned, removed his headset and stood up. He had never seen anything like this before in the cabin. Victoria still had no idea. "Who are you calling? Do not think a few phone calls will make the airline believe you. I know plenty of people at North Star." Jordan turned to her, his gaze steady. "You may know a few." "Mrs. Hale," he said slowly, "but I hired them." The words cut through the air. Sharp and absolute, Emily dropped the tablet from her hand. Dana stepped back, as if someone had pulled the curtain away to expose the truth. No, that cannot be." Victoria stammered. But when Captain Chen stepped out of the cockpit, his face drawn tight, she knew something was terribly wrong. The captain looked around and spoke into the aircraft intercom, his voice deep and clear, carrying the weight of command. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need to address a serious matter that just occurred in the first class cabin, the passenger seated in 1A, Mr. Jordan Miles is the chairman of the board and largest individual shareholder of North Star Airlines. We have received direct orders from headquarters to respond immediately to a confirmed case of discriminatory behavior on this flight. The sound landed like a silent explosion. Victoria's face went white. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor, the screen still recording, showing every detail of her expression: panic, fear, shock. The comments on the live stream poured in. What, he is the chairman? Oh my God, she just live-streamed herself insulting the owner of the company. This is going to be the biggest public relations disaster of the year. Within 10 seconds, the live stream shut off. From signal loss, the screen went dark, leaving only Victoria's heavy-breathing Captain Chen bowed slightly toward Jordan. Mr. Miles, on behalf of the entire crew, I offer my sincerest apologies. Jordan raised a hand to stop him. That won't be necessary, Captain. I do not want an apology. I want the system to learn. He stood facing the cabin, his voice firm, clear, cold as steel. For 15 minutes I was treated as a fraud, not because my ticket was wrong, but because my skin was. You do not need to explain. Every word you spoke has been recorded. Emily broke into tears, covering her face. Dana stood frozen, 2 decades of career collapsing before her eyes. Jordan bent, picked up Victoria's fallen phone, and placed it gently on her table. Mrs. Hale, did you know your live stream reached over 40,000 views in 15 minutes? Victoria could barely whisper, tears welling. I did not know who you were. Jordan looked at her, no hatred in his eyes, only sadness. That is the point. You should not have to know who I am to treat me with respect. The cabin was utterly still. Lorraine Parker sat quietly, tears running down her face, but they were tears of pride. She whispered just loud enough for her row to hear. Justice may come late, but when it does, it makes the world bow. Jordan heard her and nodded. Dana's earpiece crackled with a voice from North Star's operations center. Confirming passenger in seat 1A is Chairman Miles. All staff involved are to cease duty and await investigation. Flight command is temporarily transferred to the captain. Captain Chen signaled 2 attendants forward. Emily choked out an apology, but Jordan shook his head. It is all right. This lesson must be remembered, not erased on the ground. North Star headquarters was in chaos. The emergency communications team had already received hundreds of social media alerts. Hashtag flight fraud was turning into hashtag North Star accountability. The airline stock trading was temporarily halted for 10 minutes due to volatility on the plane. Jordan sat back in seat 1. The seat he had paid for, been denied, and now reclaimed, not just for himself, but for everyone ever told they did not belong. Captain Chen asked Mr. Miles, how should we proceed? Jordan looked around, meeting every pair of eyes. No one here deserves further humiliation, he said. But the truth will not be buried when we land. I will handle what comes next. He leaned back, eyes closed. No anger. No resentment, only the quiet of someone who had just witnessed the cracks in a system he had long known were there outside the window. The night sky opened as silver light poured through the clouds. Lorraine Parker leaned closer and said softly, Son, I know you do not need anyone to stand up for you, but thank you for reminding me that sometimes silence can still echo. Jordan smiled gently. No, ma'am, it was your voice that woke this cabin, and in his eyes was something steady and unspoken, a promise that this was only the beginning. Victoria Hale's phone still lay on the floor, its screen black, but her image, those panicked eyes, and the flushed face of shame was spreading at the speed of light. Within minutes, the live stream had been downloaded and reposted by dozens of people across every platform. And now, while the plane had yet to leave the runway, the whole world knew the woman who had humiliated a black man had, in fact, humiliated the chairman of the very airline she worshipped. Outside the window, snow drifted lightly, reflecting the airport lights. Inside the cabin, the air was thick, every breath heavy as lead. Jordan Miles stood up slowly. No shouting, no display of power. Just the simple act of rising made everyone else straighten unconsciously. He pulled an identification card from his wallet, a sleek silver plaque engraved with the North Star Airlines logo and the words, "Jordan A. Miles, Chairman of the Board." The cabin light caught the metal and flashed. In that moment, power was no longer rumor, it was undeniable reality. Dana Brooks turned pale. The seasoned supervisor looked as if the blood had drained from her body. Mr. Miles, she stammered. I didn't know. I swear. Jordan raised a hand, cutting her off. Not knowing isn't an excuse. Miss Brooks, he said, his voice low but resonant, carrying through the cabin like a bell. In the world we live in, not knowing means you chose not to see. The words struck Dana like a blade. Her head fell, tears spilling down as she dared not lift her face. Emily Larson, the young flight attendant, stood frozen. A smear of mascara streaked her cheek, her trembling hands clutching the same boarding pass Jordan had given her earlier. It was no longer just a ticket. It was an indictment of the quiet bias she had mistaken for professionalism. Mr. Miles, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I just thought. Jordan looked at her. His expression softened, but his tone firm. You thought politeness meant serving those who look more respectable. That mindset is exactly what's breaking this industry, Emily. She broke down, crying. No one comforted her. No one dared. Then Jordan turned to Victoria Hale. She sat motionless, her eyes vacant, her lips trembling. Now the seat she had clung to for 20 years as a symbol of privilege had become her cage of humiliation. Mrs. Hale Jordan said evenly, "Do you know what you've done?" She inhaled shakily. Her voice cracked. I don't know. I just thought you were different. Jordan tilted his head, eyes deep and unblinking. Different in what way? She said nothing. Tears rolled down, washing away the layers of expensive makeup. The image of a refined socialite was gone, leaving only a woman face to face with the raw truth of herself. Jordan turned to Captain Chen. Captain, please record the entire incident and send it directly to headquarters. I want every staff member involved relieved of duty upon landing. Captain Chen nodded. Yes, sir. Jordan continued. Miss Brooks and Miss Larson are temporarily suspended pending investigation for breach of protocol, discriminatory conduct, and failure to manage a bias-related situation. Dana's knees nearly buckled. She couldn't speak, only stare at the man she had tried to remove from the plane, the man now deciding her fate. Lorraine Parker watched quietly, her eyes glimmering with pride. She looked at Jordan as though seeing in him the reflection of a generation once silenced and demeaned, now standing tall to reclaim dignity, not through anger, but with a calm that made others feel ashamed. Son, she said softly, you've shown them the truth more clearly than any protest ever could. Jordan bowed his head slightly. I don't seek revenge, I just want them to remember. As the plane began to roll gently down the runway, Jordan's phone buzzed repeatedly. Dozens of notifications messages from Chief Executive Officer Helen Tan, from legal counsel, from the Emergency Communications Department. He skimmed one line, National Media Reporting Incident. Victoria Hale's live stream has reached major news outlets. Official response needed within 30 minutes. Jordan closed the phone calmly. No response needed. The truth has already spoken. He lifted his gaze and addressed the cabin, his voice steady and full. I know some of you feel pity for them, but remember this: I do not need apologies. I need change. His eyes moved across every face. Within the next 24 hours, all North Star flights will suspend first-class beverage service. Instead, I want a public statement sent to every passenger detailing exactly what happened today. No cover-ups, no edits. Because transparency is the only true form of class. The cabin was stunned. No one expected that what began as a small incident would now be revealed to heal rather than hide. Victoria Hale let out a broken sob. Are you trying to destroy me? Jordan shook his head. I don't need to destroy anyone. You've already done that yourself. He paused, meeting her eyes. But if you truly regret it, use your voice to make it right. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to those you never thought deserved to sit beside you. Victoria bowed her head and wept the pride that had masked her for years now gone. As Captain Chen announced that the aircraft was ready for takeoff, Jordan returned to seat 1A. He fastened his seatbelt and opened his laptop. On the screen appeared a new email draft titled North Star Airlines Emergency Directive Zero Tolerance Policy. He hit send. One simple action that would ripple through the entire system, from the New York office to the smallest airport in Texas, from training rooms to command centers. Before the plane left the runway, Jordan looked up one last time. The new attendant on duty, young, nervous, hopeful, leaned forward and asked softly, Sir, is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable? Jordan smiled faintly, his answer calm and profound. Just treat every passenger as if they're worthy of respect. That's all. Lorraine Parker smiled, whispering, Sometimes justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs one person willing to stand still. Jordan turned and nodded gently. Outside, the plane gathered speed, its wheels lifting from the ground and soaring into the night sky. At 30,000 feet, surrounded by stars and silence, Jordan Miles closed his eyes. He knew the storm below was just beginning, but within him there was only peace, because justice had taken flight. As North Star Flight NS-218 broke through the clouds, the cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow, and the world below became nothing more than a faint shimmer of Manhattan. But at 30,000 feet, a revolution was being set in motion, not with banners or slogans, but with a single email signed by Jordan Miles, from Chairman of the Board, Jordan A. Miles. Subject: Emergency Directive, Bias Reform Initiative. Effective immediately, North Star Airlines will begin a complete restructuring of its training and service systems. Additional budget, $75 million. Objective: to make every flight a safe and fair space for all passengers. The email was sent just as the aircraft shuddered lightly in the high-altitude wind. Within 5 minutes at North Star's Midtown headquarters, hundreds of computers lit up simultaneously. Department heads, legal advisors, communication teams, and even gate staff all received the same alert: Directive 1A, activate immediately. In the first-class cabin, Jordan Miles sat still, no longer looking out the window. His eyes were fixed on his laptop screen, where multiple online meetings were being connected. The face of Helen Tan, the airline's chief executive officer, appeared a small-framed Asian woman with a steady voice. Jordan, she said, her tone edged with concern. The incident on Flight NS-218 is spreading everywhere. Both CNN and CNBC have broadcast the live stream. We need an official response before panic sets in. Jordan leaned back, his voice calm yet chilling in its composure. We're not reacting, Helen. We're confronting. North Star has lived too long under invisible rules that make people believe politeness is enough. But politeness without justice is nothing more than a thin coat of paint over prejudice. Helen nodded. I understand. But are you sure that making everything public won't frighten the shareholders? Jordan looked directly into the camera. If a company collapses just because it dared to tell the truth, then it doesn't deserve to exist. Shareholders don't need comfort. They need awakening. His voice rang clear, cold, but luminous, like the sound of steel meeting light. In row 3, Lorraine Parker continued to watch quietly. She didn't understand all the numbers on Jordan's screen, but she understood something deeper, that he wasn't just correcting a mistake. He was rewriting the code of an entire system. Son, she said softly, I've seen many angry men, but few who could turn anger into something this noble. Jordan turned and smiled gently. No one ever wins against prejudice by shouting "Mom." Only steadfastness can make the world bow. Down below in the emergency communications office, the public relations team was in chaos. They played the video watching Victoria Hale shouting into her camera, then hearing Jordan's calm, measured voice cutting through the noise. A young staffer whispered, "My God, he handled it like a movie. No anger, no hate, just clarity." The communications director looked up and sighed. That's not clarity, that's authority, the kind that comes from knowing you're right. Back in the sky, Jordan opened a second video call, this time with the North Star Corporate Ethics Committee. 12 faces appeared on screen, all silent. Jordan spoke slowly, each word striking like a gavel. I want to establish a diversity and dignity oversight board, including both customers and employees. I want every passenger who experiences discrimination to have the option to file an anonymous report through our app. I want the company to cover legal fees if anyone decides to pursue action over bias-related incidents within our airline. And I want every report made public quarterly, no edits, no omissions. A financial director frowned. But sir, that could affect our stock value. Jordan cut him off, his tone firm as ice. Stock prices can fall, but human value cannot. North Star isn't just an airline anymore. From today, it must be a declaration. Helen Tan interjected, her voice soft but resolute. I'll authorize the $75 million tonight, and I'll personally lead the oversight committee. Jordan nodded, his gaze softening. Thank you, Helen. This isn't my mission alone. It belongs to everyone who's ever stayed silent. When the meeting ended, Jordan closed his laptop and exhaled deeply. He leaned back in his seat, the cabin light falling across his face, weary yet peaceful. He knew that when this flight landed, the entire system would shake. But that was the price of awakening. Moments later, Captain Robert Chen approached, his voice calm but respectful. Mr. Miles, the entire crew is awaiting your instruction. Should we make an official announcement to the passengers? Jordan thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes. Announce it. They deserve to hear the truth from the one at the helm. The captain bowed slightly and stepped to the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire crew, I wish to inform you that North Star Airlines has just received a direct directive from the chairman of the board, who is currently on this flight. We will be implementing a full-scale reform focused on fairness, training, and transparency. What you've witnessed today will become part of every future training program at this airline. A murmur rose, then faded. Then came the first clap, then another. Soon the sound of applause spread through the cabin, a collective act of contrition. Victoria Hale sat frozen, her face pale. As the clapping grew louder, she covered her face, quietly sobbing. "Mr. Miles, I don't know what to say." Jordan looked at her, his voice no longer cold but quietly solemn. "You don't have to say anything. Just do the right thing when the next moment comes." She lifted her head, eyes red. I'll speak to the media. I'll take responsibility." Jordan nodded. "Do it not to save yourself, but to keep others from repeating your mistake." The shockwaves from that flight didn't stop in the cabin. Across the airline industry, news exploded. United American Skylink and several major carriers announced new training programs modeled after the North Star Dignity Protocol. Business schools began requesting rights to use the video for their ethics in leadership courses. On Jordan's phone, a message from the NAACP appeared. "Mr. Miles, we would like to collaborate with North Star to set a new industry standard for equality. Thank you for turning one seat into a symbol of human dignity." Jordan read it and smiled softly. He knew this was only the beginning. In the blue glow of the night, as flight NS-218 continued toward Los Angeles, Jordan closed his eyes. The only sound left was the steady hum of the engines, gentle as the heartbeat of a new era. An era in which every passenger, no matter who they are or where they sit, will be treated as a human being. The lights in the first-class cabin dimmed into night mode, soft as moonlight. Everything settled after the storm, leaving only the steady hum of the engines and the quiet breathing of passengers still shaken by what they had witnessed. Jordan Miles rose from seat 1A and unbuckled his belt. He turned to face the cabin, his face calm but resolute, the cabin light casting a gentle glow across his expression. "What happened tonight?" He began, his deep voice, steady in the stillness, was never just a fight over a seat. It was a test for all of us to see how we treat someone we think is not like us. Heads lifted. No one pretended to read their newspaper anymore. No one whispered. They all looked at the man standing before them, the man who had been publicly humiliated, yet now spoke with the serenity of someone who had already forgiven. Jordan walked slowly down the aisle, his voice low and even. "I am not angry. I am sad. Because every time we stay silent in the face of injustice, we allow it to grow. Every time we look away, we teach another child to believe they are less than someone else." He stopped beside Lorraine Parker's seat and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Mom. You did what everyone else here was too afraid to do. You spoke up." Lorraine looked up at him, her aged eyes shining. "You may have power, young man," she said softly, "but humanity still needs courage, and tonight you showed them both." Jordan turned back toward the others, his voice gaining strength. "I am fortunate to have a position that allows me to protect myself. But out there are millions who don't have a voice at all. And I promise you from this moment forward, North Star will be that voice." He paused, his gaze sweeping across every face. "From now on, every flight we take will begin with one pledge. Respect is not a privilege. It is the standard." Applause broke out first from row 2, then spreading through the entire cabin. It wasn't loud, but it was solid, like a collective acknowledgement of a shared lesson. Jordan smiled, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "This world doesn't need more perfect people." He said it just needs more people willing to choose what's right, even when what's right leaves them standing alone. From the back row, Thomas Grant, the businessman who had stayed silent until now, slowly stood. "Mr. Miles," he said quietly, "I should have spoken sooner. I saw what was wrong, but I was afraid. I won't let that happen again." Jordan nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Grant. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting, even when you're still afraid." He returned to his seat, picked up his laptop, and opened it. On the screen was the new company webpage, the headline reading, "North Star Dignity Every Seat Matters." Below it were 3 lines he had just written. "When you fly with us, you're not just a passenger. You are a human being worthy of respect. And if anyone forgets that, remind them with the truth." He pressed publish. The intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, flight NS-218 has now reached cruising altitude. On behalf of the entire crew, we thank you not just for flying with North Star, but for being part of a lesson we will never forget." Lorraine Parker smiled softly. "That lesson," she murmured, "is worth more than any first-class ticket." Jordan chuckled quietly and turned his gaze toward the night sky, where the stars stretched out like a silver path. He knew that from the seat that had once been taken from him, a movement had now taken flight. The sky above Los Angeles glimmered like a giant mirror as North Star Flight NS-218 began its descent. The first rays of dawn streamed through the cabin windows, painting the first-class cabin in gold, the same cabin that only hours earlier had been a battlefield of prejudice, now silent like a collective confession. Jordan Miles opened his eyes and unbuckled his seatbelt. He was no longer the man who had been humiliated at departure, but the one who had turned a moment of disgrace into a milestone that would transform an entire industry. Captain Robert Chen's voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now descending into Los Angeles International Airport. North Star thanks you for your patience and for witnessing a new beginning." A quiet round of applause rose, not like the applause at the start of the flight, but softer, steadier, carrying the sound of understanding. Victoria Hale sat silently, her face pale, but her eyes had changed. She turned to Jordan, her voice hoarse. "I can't erase what I said, but I won't let this story die." Jordan nodded slightly. "If you turn your mistake into a lesson, it will no longer be a mistake." A tear rolled down her cheek, not of shame this time, but of awakening. Lorraine Parker stood steadying herself with Jordan's arm as the plane touched the runway. "Son," she said today, "you taught the world something important. They can take your seat, but they can never take your dignity." Jordan smiled. "Thank you, Mom. But this lesson doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to everyone who was ever forced into silence." The cabin door opened, and the morning breeze swept in, cool and fresh. The passengers left quietly, not in fear but in reflection. Jordan was the last to leave. He paused at the doorway, looking back at seat 1A1 final time. The seat that had once symbolized privilege now stood as a symbol of dignity. Later that afternoon at North Star headquarters, a new poster was hung in the main lobby. Against a backdrop of clear blue sky, the words stood bold and bright. "Your seat doesn't define your worth. Your actions do. Jordan A. Miles." That evening the media called it the flight that changed everything. But to Jordan it wasn't a media event. It was a reminder. Justice doesn't come from the courtroom. It comes from the moment one person dares to stand still and say, "Enough." The plane had landed, but the journey toward awakening had only just begun. From the perspective of an expert in leadership culture and corporate ethics, the journey of Jordan Miles is not just the story of a seat, but a reminder that dignity can never be taken away, only tested. The true strength of power lies in the ability to make others feel seen and respected. If you believe that fairness begins with small, everyday actions, then like this video, subscribe to the channel to help spread that value, and comment below with a phrase that reflects your belief in what is right. Keep your dignity.